strength, power, luxury, best in class,
ergonomic,
JD Power and Associates, cruise control, sleek, environmentally friendly, Kelly Blue Book. Introducing the brand new Toyota Prius. It's like the Toyota Prius, but it's bigger, wetter, girthier, and uncut. That's right, drive around in style in the new 2026 Toyota Prius. The Toyota Prius is circumcised, but not the Prius. It's got rich, buttery foreskin that you can really feel on the handling and suspension. Also, it doesn't use gasoline. Fill the Toyota Prius with KY jelly, pop the hood and listen to that kitten purr. Meow. Daddy like. Daddy wanna suck. Daddy wanna suck on the Toyota Prius all day. Yummy in my tummy.
You have successfully connected to the Secret Society of Flight Tires podcast.
Hi, everybody!
Alright, can I ask you a serious question? Am I putting on a noticeably phony podcasting voice? Have I progressed to that point after my first 2 seasons and almost half of a third? I swear to God that I try to use the same exact voice that I use when I'm reading to my kids, with wildly different subject matter obviously, but it feels the same. I'm starting to get all self-conscious about it. I imagine a ramped up pro podcast or radio voice to be like,
"Hey, welcome back to another badass episode of the program, everybody."
But I don't know. I'm the one talking here every episode. Maybe it's just that I have to listen to myself talk so much while I edit this stuff, and I hate it. Maybe it feels like I'm using a phony voice because my normal talking voice with my friends and loved ones is more of a quiet, mush-mouthed mumble, and everyone's constantly asking me to repeat myself all the time. And with this show, I'm trying to speak clearly and enunciate my words so strangers can actually understand them. I hope I'm not. Please, troll me endlessly if I end up speaking like a morning zoo goon.
Some great jokes this morning on the Token Jokes of the Morning. The MMS Buzzard Morning Zoo grand prize for this week, a complete downhill ski package including Blizzard Quattro skis. Remember, if we read your joke on the air, we send you the Buzzard Morning Zoo t-shirt courtesy of Daffy Dan's. All right, you guys.
And a side note, have you all even noticed my little Easter egg of saying badass in every episode this season? I'm a real slang master. Always have been, really. When I was like 10 years old, my wonderful aunt, who I love very much, purchased a subscription to Disney Adventure magazine for my brothers and I. And we used to crack up at their suggested trending slang terms for the cool early 90s youth, and mock the magazine by overusing terms they suggested like all that in a bag of chips and cool beans. Anyways, during this season, my favorite slang term is badass. I feel badass just saying it, actually.
He's been given the name Badass, and he's a huge hit on the web right now.
So Season 3 of Secret Society of Fly Tires is in full swing now, and I have another returning guest on the show today. He's one of my favorites, too, Gilligan Koles. The last time we talked was way back in Season 1 when I was just a wet baby podcast host, and I've aged significantly since then in my face, in my decrepit tattooed skeleton body, and as a professional broadcaster. Gilligan doesn't seem to age at all. Not like he's old or anything, but he holds timeless knowledge and an all-encompassing drive to master the Truckee River. He's the cream of the crop at the top of the mountain.
Yeah. I am the cream, yeah.
I mean that literally and figuratively. I finally had the chance to go fish with him, and it was a swell day on the water. I really should be fishing the Truckee more because it's an awesome little river with a healthy population of big fish. Now that Gilligan has shared some pointers with me and helped me bring a really nice brown trout to the net, I can see myself making the trek up Highway 80 a whole lot more. For the record, my buddy Steve was on the boat with us too, and he caught way more fish. I only had the one, but it was the fish that I drove up there for.
Mission accomplished.
Anyway, we aren't going to nerd out about the Truckee River on this episode of the program, though. We already did that. I invited Gilligan back on to tell me and you all about his new handmade Truckee speed rods, a Swiss Army knife of a stick that can really do anything. From Euro nymphing to bobber fishing to throwing dry flies, swinging flies, and even stripping big ugly streamers. It may not sound possible to build a rod that can do all those things well, but Gilligan cracked the code. I feel like he needs to hire me to film an hour-long infomercial to help sell these puppies. If anyone could crack the code, it would be Gilligan. You can fish all those different ways I mentioned on the Truckee, which is what urged Gilligan to get creative with his new rods. He knows that river like the back of his hand and knows exactly what the fish want to eat and when they want to eat it and how they want to eat it. It's like the Truckee River is a Michelin star restaurant and Gilligan is the head chef. I'm eager for you all to hear him tell us all about his highly versatile fly rods and the awesome streamers that he ties that don't even have a name. Maybe he'll let us give them a name. I used Gil's nameless streamers all day long on our recent float, only switching up to see if a different color would be more appealing to the hungry fish.
What the hell? I'll just eat some trash.
They're big, heavy, and flashy while still applying a fairly natural color scheme, and they have 2 hooks, including one connected off the back in an articulated fashion. All this while still appearing to be a seemingly simple tie, a recipe that most guide flies tend to follow one way or another. He downplayed how cool his streamers are because that's Gil's style, but they were kind of subtly blowing my mind all day long. I'd take them out of the water between casts every so often just to marvel at them, and Gilligan was kind enough to answer some lingering questions about them that I didn't have time to ask while we were out on his boat banging them off the bank over and over again. Anyways, we'll get to all that stuff. When I started writing this episode about building fly rods, I couldn't help but be reminded of an alleged alien being that is said to have been working with government personnel on advanced tech named J-Rod. I'm not making this up, just passing on a story that I read on the internet where everything is real and true. Yes, I know I said in the last episode that UFOs totally sold out, and they did, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy some of the related stories. The tales of our government working with strange, alleged non-human intelligence are still some of my favorites. But before I get into the J-Rod story, I want to make it clear that after 20 plus years of reading about UFOs and their supposed pilots, that I do not believe anyone or anything cruising around the atmosphere in advanced tech to be extraterrestrial. I personally believe it's a number of things all piled up into one phenomenon. Part of it seems to line up with Grant Cameron's theory of wow, and that any sighting or interaction with these things is most likely meant to blow your mind and push further thought. Part of it could be top secret projects that our government and military keep covered up until they want to integrate their stuff into modern society. On that same tip, those unidentified flying objects that are piloted by humans seem to have been conducting experiments on people and animals. Yeah, there are publicly available CIA documents that state exactly that, actually, in South America and probably other places. I know I've said this before on the show, but I'll say it again. I don't believe highly advanced craft that are said to traverse across space, alternate dimensions, or time itself would simply crash on Earth due to bad weather or a tower without the proper lighting on it or anything else. But again, there is evidence out there that the CIA were actually staging abduction scenarios, messing with people, and taking them in their experimental craft to simulate these otherworldly experiences. If that one interests you, you may want to pick up a book called My Labs, M-I-L-A-B-S, Military Mind Control and Alien Abduction by Helmut Lammer, Ph.D.
Damn it, man, I'm a doctor, not a torpedo technician.
And Google those documents if you want to read them for yourselves.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Maybe I'll even put them in the show notes. There's also the fact that those experiences can sometimes mimic what happens while using certain psychedelic drugs, or experiencing things like sleep paralysis. To me, there's a far longer list of plausible explanations for what the phenomenon might be than aliens zooming through space to check us out and touch our butts and stuff. When the mainstream media is telling you these things are from another planet, it's a good sign that a narrative is being fed to you for a reason, and that reason is usually fear. That is all a long-winded lead up to the tale of J-Rod, and a few other of my favorite stories that involve the US government interacting with what people claim to be alien beings. I can still enjoy these stories even if I don't fully believe them, okay? I'm hoping you will too, because I'm spending my free time writing about them and then recording them onto my stupid-ass laptop and then editing them and uploading them to the internet. For you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just entertain my ramblings for a little bit, and then Gilligan will serve up some info that you can actually use.
Rogaine Extra Strength is proven to regrow hair, or at least stop hair loss for 4 out of 5 men.
I like my chances.
Okay, here's the deal. Rogaine makes hair growth juice specifically for your pubes now. That's it. That's the commercial. If you're going bald down there, you can order Rogaine's special groin formula and rub that on your nards, and it'll grow back thicker and curlier than ever before. So buy it. Buy new Rogaine brand pube growth serum. It works well and it's delicious. You're not supposed to drink it, but if they didn't want people drinking down bottles of the stuff, they shouldn't have made it so tasty. It's their own fault. They're the ones to blame.
So, J-Rod. I'm not even going to bother telling you what URL I'm reading this from, but the J-Rod tales initially surfaced in the 1980s, and according to these tales, J-Rod is a tall, slender alien with large almond-shaped eyes. The classic gray that Whitley Strieber pretty much popularized with the cover of his book Communion. He is said to have been a survivor of a UFO crash that happened in Kingman, Arizona in 1953. After the crash, J-Rod was taken to Area 51, where he helped scientists and engineers to reverse engineer alien technology. He is said to have shared knowledge about his home planet and universe with the U.S. government. According to author Preston Dennett, the extraterrestrial allegedly worked at Area 51 for some years, leading to most of the technology and electronic devices that we're using today. The stories of J-Rod are based on the accounts of several individuals, including military personnel and civilian contractors who worked at Area 51. These individuals claim to have seen J-Rod with their own eyes and to have spoken with him. Bill Uhouse, a former Navy pilot who claimed to have researched the UFO that crashed in Kingman, was stationed at Area 51 in the middle of the 1960s. In an interview from 2000, he claimed to have had direct communication with J-Rod and stated that the alien, quote, sounded just like you and I, and tried to answer questions. The alien spoke perfect English, not an animatronic android or a CGI alien, but was real.
This J-Rod his skin was pinkish, but a little bit rough, and that kind of stuff. Not horrible looking, or to me, he didn't look horrible looking. There were certain reasons for the secrecy. I could understand that, no different than, the first atomic bomb that they built. Maybe not the way that everybody expects it, but in some manner they determined appropriate, to show everybody, hey, look at what we got. The document I signed ends in 2003.
Dan Burish, another individual that claims to have had contact with J-Rod, says he was employed as a microbiologist to care for J-Rod and ensure that he stayed well. He said the government made him take tissue samples from the captured alien and claimed they became friends during the 2 years he worked on the project.
You're my best friend.
Conspiracy theorists and delusional podcast hosts that read garbage off the internet and pass it on to their listeners say the object crashed on May 21st, 1953. 8 miles northeast of the Kingman Airport in the Arizona desert. Government officials supposedly sent a team of 40 scientists to the crash site to investigate, and they allegedly found a UFO.
Allegedly.
The object was described as metallic, 30 feet wide and 3.5 feet high, oval-shaped with portholes, the author said. Inside were 2 to 4 4-foot-tall humanoids, deceased, according to most sources, with large eyes wearing metallic suits. Engineer Arthur Stansel was allegedly one of the people who helped recover the UFO, and concluded it struck the ground at 1,200 miles per hour but was strangely undamaged. That doesn't sound like a crash to me. The object was not built by anything, obviously, that we know on Earth, he said. It was more like a teardrop-shaped cigar, like a streamlined cigar. The current whereabouts of J-Rod are unknown. One theory espoused by UFO enthusiasts is that J-Rod is still alive and living in seclusion.
Please, leave me alone.
Some others suggest that he was eventually released from Area 51 and allowed to return to his home planet. It is also possible that he remains under the control of the U.S. government, and perhaps in a secret facility or on a remote island. Another possibility is that J-Rod is deceased. Some accounts suggest that he died while working at Area 51, while others claim that he was killed by the government. The government then went on to create the all-star Seattle Mariners outfielder, also named J-Rod, in a lab to cover their tracks and confuse the masses. J-Rod is a fun story, but I like the one about a different alien visitor that allegedly worked with our government named Valiant Thor a little better. Not a tall gray alien, but a handsome human-looking man. Someone named Corey Deshawn drafted a nice little write-up about Valiant Thor for Medium.com, so I'm going to read it for you. Valiant Thor is a name that is often associated with conspiracy theories and extraterrestrial encounters. According to various sources, he was an alien who arrived on Earth in the 1950s and stayed here for several years. His story is shrouded in mystery, and to this day it's not clear whether he actually existed or not. Despite the uncertainty around his existence, Valiant Thor has become an important figure in ufology and conspiracy theory circles.
Dear Matthew,
Please remember that I am very, 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 very important.
His purported arrival on Earth and his alleged mission have been the subject of much speculation and scrutiny. Some believe that his visit was a turning point in human history, while others dismiss it as a hoax. According to the story, Valiant Thor arrived on Earth in 1957 along with 2 other beings. They landed in Alexandria, Virginia, and were met by a police officer who took them to the Pentagon. Valiant Thor claimed to be from the planet Venus and said that he was part of a delegation that had come to establish contact with Earth. Why don't we hear about these kind of stories anymore? Aliens seem to have stopped arriving and saying they were from another planet at some point. Descriptions of these supposed experiences have changed drastically over time. My favorite UFO researcher, Grant Cameron, likes to point this out, along with other things like people don't see aliens wearing space helmets anymore, and that the phenomenon has evolved in our own consciousness as time progressed. And now fucking Medium.com is asking me to create an account to read the rest of this, goddammit, and I refuse. So I'll wing the rest of this from what I remember. So there are alleged photos of Valiant Thor that get passed around. I'll try and link to one in the show notes or something. Have you noticed that I like to say that I'll put stuff in the show notes and then I don't? It's laziness, not me purposely lying to you.
I have never lied once in my life.
Valiant Thor even made an appearance as a character in a recent season of a show I thought I enjoyed at one point but no longer do, called American Horror Story. And there's a fairly popular book amongst people like me called Stranger at the Pentagon, all about Thor. The book claims that at some point in the 1950s, Eisenhower was visited at the White House by this inhumanly handsome man calling himself Valiant Thor, who claimed to come from an advanced civilization beneath the surface of Venus and wanted to help humanity avoid destroying itself by preventing nuclear war. The author claimed to be an eyewitness to Thor's fantastic abilities, which included the ability to walk through walls and leave no fingerprints, and that Thor's spaceship, the Victory 1, is hidden somewhere near Lake Mead, Nevada, probably in the goddamn Hoover Dam. Rumors circulated of Thor making an actual appearance at a UFO convention too, but nothing more than that. The author's claims are highly dubious, but like other urban legends, bits and pieces of it can be found floating through fictional retakes. For example, the Men in Black franchise riffed on Thor's lack of fingerprints by having the fingerprints of their various agents permanently removed. I like to think that Valiant Thor is just a dude who pranked his way into the Pentagon. Kind of like this guy on TikTok that I like that walks into businesses and asks them for access to their roof, which they typically give him, sometimes just handing over the keys.
Allow me to show you how to get on top of any roof you like. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging because it's a hospital, but nothing I can't handle. Hello. Can I get on top of your roof, please?
Do you need the key?
Yes, please. I'd like the key. All right. That's the master key. Thank you.
No problem.
The last one of these that I'll share with you is the story of Skinny Bob. I have a friend named Bob who also happens to be skinny, and I will be calling him Skinny Bob from here on out. I don't know why I didn't already. But the Skinny Bob that is a viral sensation in the conspiracy community is a supposedly alien being of the classic gray variety. Skinny Bob generally refers to a series of short video clips posted to YouTube in 2011, purportedly showing various scenes of aliens and alien paraphernalia between 1942 and 1970-ish. Skinny Bob is, of course, one of those aliens, allegedly the one who crashed at Roswell and survived in captivity under military and scientific scrutiny for some time. There's even a fairly active subreddit dedicated to Skinny Bob and the surrounding theories. They do some pretty deep investigation, too. It's not often that you get moving pictures of a supposed alien being that looks so real, and I will admit these are pretty good. Okay, have you had enough alien crap? I have. So let's move on to something relevant to the topic of this episode. I just typed 3 pages of nonsense about aliens, and I don't even believe in aliens from outer space. Reading about that stuff is still probably healthier than reading about politics, though, and being tricked into hating your neighbor because they have different views than yours. Now, something that I do believe in is Gilligan's talent. I've witnessed it in person myself. He knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's doing, and he does it all with purpose. He would not be selling his Truckee speed rods if he didn't believe that they could do all the things he claims they do. He took the prototypes out on the water to confirm that they could do exactly what he wanted them to do before he even told anyone about them. He is not full of baloney. I'm slowly inching my way towards acquiring the necessary materials and tools to build my own fly rod. I've almost pulled the trigger on a few cool-looking kits that are supposed to include everything you need to roll your own fly rod, but decided against it right before hitting the purchase button. I think I did that on numerous occasions on the Epic Fly Rods website because their kits look great, and from what I've heard, the components are all high quality. The topic of building fly rods keeps coming up, really. Not just from Gilligan, but a local buddy of mine builds them, and one of my guests from an upcoming episode, Rob Beckius from Two Hand Hardware Company, builds them too, and even builds the equipment that you use to make your own rods for larger scale rod builders. So it's just a matter of time. And it spurred me to read a little bit about the history of fly rods too, because that's what I do when I'm interested in something. I start from the beginning. It could be a band or a place I want to travel to or some new fun conspiracy that's scratching the itch. I want to know the whole story. So whether you're interested or not, or you already know, I'm going to share a little of my research with you. So who crafted the first modern fly rod? I haven't read yet, but it better not be another British guy. It's always a British guy.
You knobhead! You're a fucking dick! Think you're fucking clever, do ya?
We'll find out together. If you already know, don't tell me. I want it to be a surprise. Okay, I'm going to pull some info from mainflyco.com for this one. The rich history of rod making spans the globe and goes back hundreds of years. One of the earliest written references was in the 15th century. The book Treatise stated that a fishing rod should be cut during the winter when the wood was driest from a hazel, aspen, or willow tree. It should be 9 feet long and as thick as a man's lower arm. Are they talking about the lowest lower arm?
Oh, baby.
Because a man's actual arm, any part of it, is way too thick for a fly rod, right? They're talking about my dick, or his dick, or someone's dick. I don't know.
Needle dick! Needle dick!
Anyways, a tip section is then attached from the top shoot of blackthorn, crabapple, or juniper, and the butt section planed to taper. Early anglers constructed their rods themselves, and it took an entire winter. Bait or fly fishermen used the same rod. Imagine that. They were all made in 2 parts and ranged from 6 to 18 feet long. The sturdier butt section was wood, and the more limber tip was constructed of a variety of materials, including spaghetti noodles that were melted together and possum tails. The rod maker had to possess the skills of a cabinet maker and a blacksmith. He heated and steamed the rod parts to straighten them and prepare them for joining. A hole was then burned into the lower section so as to insert the tip.
That's what she said. Ha! I don't get it.
By the early 1700s, haberdasheries sold fishing rods for the non-do-it-yourselfers. Even then, anglers talked about the need for more limberness to absorb the pressure of big fish so the line wouldn't break. During the heyday of whaling in the 17th century, baleen became the material of choice for rod tips because of its lighter weight and flexibility. Baleen is found in the mouths of filter-feeding whales. The spaghetti noodles and possum tails was an obvious joke, but the baleen is not. That's pretty cool. I mean, badass.
Badass. That's what they're calling him.
It wasn't until the mid-1700s that rod makers manufactured a product specifically for fly fishing with limber materials such as ash or willow. Trout rods measured 12 feet or more, while salmon rods frequently exceeded 17 feet. Americans began building their own rods from greenheart and lancewood imported from Britain. Then everything changed when the first bamboo canes arrived from the Far East. Mainflyco.com says that the first split cane rods were manufactured in England in 1851 using cane strips glued together. But the results were crude, and another website I was reading called lelandfly.com argues something slightly different. They claim that in 1845, 6 years earlier, an American violin maker named Samuel Philippe created what is believed to be the first split cane fly fishing rod, encouraging many American anglers to develop new tapers and modify ferrule systems with this technique. Later, Bangor, Maine's own Hiram Leonard perfected the technique for building split cane rods and is considered the father of bamboo rods. He invented a machine that beveled the bamboo strip edges to make a more uniformly tapered rod in much less time. Thanks, Hiram. Split cane remained the most popular and widely used material for making fly fishing rods until the early part of the 20th century, when fiberglass and new resins caught the attention of anglers and the industry. In 1946, a military researcher by the name of Dr. Howald broke his split cane rod and used a fiberglass tube to fix it. As a result, the Shakespeare Company launched the first commercial fiberglass rods and dubbed the rod-making process the Howald process. These rods featured a fiberglass fabric wrapped in a spiral around a steel mandrel. Strands of additional fiber aligned with the axis of the mandrel were placed over the fiberglass material. You know, I told you in a previous episode that I've almost completely stopped believing in documented history at this point in my near black-pilled, conspiracy-addled brain. I'm not sure what to believe here, but let's just hoist the American flag anyway and take credit for the modern fly rod here in the United States. The Brits or the Scots may have created something earlier, but it wasn't as cool as what our guys made, okay? That's just a meaningless opinion of a buffoon, me. Gilligan is doing his part to keep the evolution of fly rods on a positive trajectory. Let's cut the shit and let him tell us all about his Truckee speed rods with a little streamer talk mixed in. God bless America and Gilligan Koles.
Hell yeah. That's right.
Gilligan, thanks for coming on the show again, dude. Your triumphant return.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, remember that time I came up and fished with you and we caught my first brown trout and it was a large one?
Fucker, dude. You know, like people like look for that shit for years, just like whatever. Just go do it the first time, right?
It was so cool.
It's so rad.
But anyway, I've been enamored with the streamers that we were throwing ever since, and been looking for a way to get you back on the show. And it just so happens that you have this new rod coming out, and that really sealed the deal. And I'm just as stoked on those rods as I was on the streamers I just mentioned. And like you know, the posts, you have this confidence when you're posting about them that just made me like go like I need to learn more. I need one of those things, and you know, I just wanted to kind of learn about them.
I mean, like, I'm not talking out my ass, but I really do feel like this is the best rod I fished.
Yeah.
And I made it. So it's like, it feels good to like have that in my hands, you know, like, I mean, I fished so many rods over the years and fuck, dude. I mean, you think about it, like I've fished probably hundreds of rods because people will come with me and fish and they have a certain brand or whatever, dude. And like, some are great and some aren't that great, and they're all okay, but I felt like I could make a rod that was better than anything that I could buy. And so that's what I did.
I love that. It takes guts to step out and really put your creativity.
I was like, fuck it, dude, I could do better than what other people are doing, and so like on the Truckee, we do a lot of Euro nymphing, we do a lot of tight line nymphing, I do a lot of streamer fishing. And I wanted a rod that could throw heavy jig type acre flies and mono type rigs and stuff like that, but still not compromise when you wanted to throw a fly line with it, And so like if you buy a Euro specific rod these days, it's just Euro specific, it's usually a noodle and they're usually too long and they're just not that great, really. I don't think, it's great if you're fishing like a stream in New Hampshire, but it's probably not great here, and so I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do my own thing, and if people want to buy some, great. If not, no big deal. Gives me something to do in the winter, and it's just like kind of fun to do, so
well, back up a little bit though. Tell me about how the idea sprouted, of putting your ideas,
years ago, I wanted to build my own rods years ago, and I wanted to have them done overseas and kind of like do them cheaply, I mean, have them built nicely, but cheaply.
Affordable.
Yeah. That's the word. But, I was like, fuck it, man. Like, you look at this shit now and everything is built overseas. So then I was like, well, I'm going to try to find an American blank manufacturer that can make me a blank that I want. And I'm going to use all American components on it. So I'm going to use all the guides, the reel seat, everything, like even the epoxy that I fucking use on it,
Way cool.
Is all made in America. So I think that's cool because a lot of the companies, even if you buy a $1,000, 1,200 rod, a lot of times the companies, even though they said they have fucking made in America shit on it, they're still not making, the guys sometimes aren't made in America, right?
Sure, yeah.
They'll see it's not made in America. And if you look at a lot of these rods, like some of them are crap, even like you look at how they like wrap the guides and they use like 4 coats of epoxy on these things, big old football wraps. And like, you don't really need all that. Like, not that I'm like an expert, rod maker or anything, but I just wanted to make a rod that I could fish everything with, like a 10-foot 4-weight and a 10-foot 5-weight that I could fish everything with, like I could fish streamers with, I could fish dry flies with, I could fish a mono rig with, as far as like Euro nymphing.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Like I initially thought it was It might have been just something that you said with one of your videos where I thought it was specific to Euro and streamers, but like the more videos that I watched, it was you were doing everything with them.
Yeah, doing everything with it. Because I fish a lot of like dry dropper rigs and shit,
Sure.
because I love to cast. I just like to cast. So a lot of times when you're, Euro nymphing, you're not really casting,
Yeah.
And
That's my hang up. That's my hang up with it.
Yeah,
I want to cast it.
You're not really casting your fly rod, and so it kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it,
Yeah.
So finally, I feel like I got a rod that can actually do it all and not compromise with really anything, and it's super light and like the rad unsanded blanks. It's just cool,
Yeah.
Like,
So were you like wrapping rods yourself before you got to the point of having somebody put these things together, or like what was the testing period like that you're
so I'm actually doing the rods myself.
Oh, you are? Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I wrap them all myself, and it took a lot of practice, to like get it right. I think the guide spacing, how you space your guides on the rod makes a huge difference on how it flexes and how it casts.
Sure.
There's a lot of like little things I learned along the way, and I'm not saying that I learned it by myself, but I had a dude on Instagram help me out. He was from Reno. His name's Leonard, and he makes his own rods in Washington State, and they're sick, And he's like, dude, if you need any help, call me, chat with me, and he's like, he got me going on like, the right epoxy to use. Like there's so many different epoxies out there, and like it just little things like that make a huge difference, right? So now I got the right epoxy that I use, and for the guys, and then I got the right guys. I use Snake Brand guys from Washington, like deploy Snake Brand guys, which are badass.
That's a brand, not a type of guide?
There's single foot guides, and then there's snake guides, which are double footed.
Okay.
But Mike in Washington State they're called Snake Brand,
Okay.
He's like he's rad. He's like in his 70s, and he makes them all there.
Cool.
Washington State,
Super
cool.
Yeah,
and he's helped me, like, and everything else I do myself. I make my grips. The rod manufacturers, all the big name rod manufacturers, use cork, and it's really hard now to get like really good cork from Portugal, because
it seems like its own skill to make those cork handles
but the
too.
Cork industry, it's like the wine industry took all the cork, so what you get is usually shitty corks, or it's like not really full grade cork on a fly rod these days. But cork isn't a great component for a grip on a fly rod because it's like a dampener, and so I'm using carbon fiber grips now, and it's like especially in a Euro rod, you want to feel everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a carbon fiber grip on your fly rod, you actually feel the rod better,
How are you shaping carbon fiber? Like it looks like they're not just like straight grips.
It's just like foam that it's like a hard density foam that you put on a mandrel, and then you can put in a chuck on a lathe.
Okay, all right.
And you can sand them and shape them, and then you put a sleeve over it, like you epoxy a carbon fiber sleeve over it. So, but it's a better grip than cork. And like now that I've been fishing them, I'll never go back to cork. Like it's a way better material. It like took a minute. Like I felt it like it was slippery at first, but after you fish it for like 20 minutes, you're like, whoa, dude, this is a huge difference in how my rod feels. When you build a rod, like I was saying about the epoxy, like, and when you got epoxy all over your rod and all the ferrules and guides, it adds a lot of weight. So I'm just using 2 coats of epoxy, on the rod, and it keeps it super light. And so you can have a 10-foot rod like I'm building, and it's probably 3.2 ounces, 3.1 ounces, which is really light.
And still plenty strong to hold those things on with just 2 coats and everything.
Oh yeah, I mean, like 1 coat would probably hold it just fine, So it's just that when you're putting all that epoxy on it, you're covering up a lot of fuck ups, right? When you wrap the guides. So, and you can see you can see some flaws in some of my wraps, and fuck it, it fishes great, So, I mean, you can see flaws in, like, when you look at the Thomas and Thomas rod, you can see that there's gaps in some of the thread that they wrap the guides on there, you know, and that's like the gold standard, right? A Thomas and Thomas rod or a Scott or something like that, you know. But, so fuck it.
What are the blanks? What are the blanks made out of that you're using?
It's just regular. It's carbon fiber, you know, so graphite, but they're all made in America, you know, and they're pretty sick, man. You know, like, yeah, they're good blanks. So they're rad. They're just, it's good shit, and I'm proud to have it. You know.
Yeah. So how long were you messing around with them until you were comfortable, you know, posting about them and telling people about them?
Like for quite a long time, actually. You know, like like the hard part, honestly, was probably getting the epoxy right on the on the guides. You know, like getting it to look good. You know, like to look like a sage or some shit, right?
Yeah,
so I practiced, but I've been tying flies for like 30 years, so it wasn't like it was that hard.
Yeah, that's the element of rod building that's like enticing because I tie, right? And it feels like it's like an inevitable.
I mean, anybody can make a rod. It's really not that hard. It's just, you know, the epoxy part of it is probably the hardest part, because you got to mix it properly, you know, consistently all the time, mix it right, and have the right temperature for it to come out nice and clean and you know, right? I mean, you don't really need a lot of special tools or anything, really. You could build a rod like basically fucking super cheap and probably have it come out pretty good, you know?
Yeah, I've seen some kind of like kit type stuff where it's like
all that shit's fine. Like, you don't need any of the fancy shit unless you probably want to put out more than one or two rods, you know, right?
Totally.
Yeah, like
for a long time, I was eyeing those epic rod building kits. I think they're an Australian company.
Yeah, New Zealand, I think.
New Zealand.
They're sick. Yeah, they're good rods. Yeah.
But I never pulled the trigger, you know. Probably best that I held off too.
Oh, I mean, I think probably for the price and if you bought the kit, it's good. They're great rods, you know.
Yeah. The kits were definitely cheaper too, and I felt like I could do it. And I got the instructions and stuff, and was studying up on it. And then I just was like, I'm not going to buy one yet. I'm going to hold off.
Yeah, you could totally do it, dude. What I did at first is I just practiced on a bunch of old blanks, you know, shitty blanks that I had laying around in the garage, and I just fucking practiced until it looked good, you know. And then I was like, fuck it, I'll just doing it, you know.
But was there a moment? Did you have a buddy fishing it who was stoked on it, and you're like, okay, these are ready, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like when I gave them to people, and I was like, hey, dude, fish this, and I thought, fuck, I just can't believe how light this rod is, and that was the big thing, you know. Like the lightness, I think is pretty cool, you know.
Yeah.
And they're sensitive, and they're just good rods, you know. And I'm not gonna sell a million of them or anything. Like, I don't even really care if I actually sell that many of them. They're just fucking rad rods, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider having like dueling reel seats on these, so you could have like one set up on the top and one on the bottom?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could. So that's another thing, right? So you talk about reel seats. Like if you look at most Euro rods, you know, they have down locking reel seats to put the reel closer back to the end of the rod to counterbalance the rod, right?
Or one of my rods is like that,
Yeah, but actually, if you put your finger up in your Euro nipping with your finger like a pistol grip, your palm goes into the barrels, to the sliding barrels of your reel seat, and that kind of sucks. So what I do is cut my reel, my reel seats are cut down so that they're smaller, and you can still have an up locking reel seat.
Okay.
You know, you can kind of just barely fit the reel in there. And if you just use a little bit heavier of a reel, it counterbalances your rod, you know. So you don't have that kind of weird feeling of the rod or the reel being right next to the end of the rod, you know.
Yeah.
Because when you cast a rod, you don't, if you're casting a rod, like just dry fly fishing, you want the reel to be closer to your hand and the grip than further away. See, but if you're Euro nipping, you know, the market trend is to have the reel further away from your hand to counterbalance the tip heaviness of the rod, right? You know, but you don't really need to do all that shit. Like, I think down locking reel seats are lame, and I don't like fishing them, so up locking reel seats on these rods, so if you want to cast it, they cast better,
more comfortable in your hand right there.
It just feels better, having the fucking reel all the way down on the
So
butt of
it's so how is it possible for one rod, like what did you do to make it feel comfortable to fish all those different ways, from dries to bobbers to Euro nymphing and streamers? Like, what are the characteristics that you're looking for?
So I think the big thing is so I think the reel seat was important, not to have a huge reel seat so the reel is slightly back, but it's still yet close to the cork, right? Or to the carbon fiber grip. And I think guide spacing is important. So when you have a Euro nymphing rod, you usually want your first stripper guide to be somewhat close to the handle, right? So that there's no line sag. So my first stripper guide's about 25 inches from the grip, right? So there's not a lot of line sag there. And then I used all single foot guides that are actually relatively small. So the stripper guide's pretty small. It's 10 millimeter stripper guide. And then there's all single foot guides running up the rod towards the tip top. And the last guide before the tip top is a double foot snake guide, so that if you're fishing mono, it doesn't wrap around your tip. So I could use all single foot guides, but you change that second one, the one right by the tip top, to a standard, regular double foot guide, and you don't get that line twist, and you don't need these huge ass big guides, right, to fish with. So my guides are actually somewhat smaller, and the line, actually, if you even use a dry fly line, it just like shoots right out, because I have 12 guides on the rod spaced a little closer together, and then boom, it just shoots them out.
Stays right in line there. Yeah. No muss, no fuss.
Yeah, and if you're using mono, you don't get any sag in your line, which is kind of a killer if you're Euro nymphing, right? If your first stripper guide is too far away from the grip, you get a lot of line sag right there,
Yeah. So what kind of line, like if you wanted to set yourself up to like I think of this, and I fished the McLeod more than I fished the Truckee, so it was like the first thing that's come to mind. I feel like I use all those methods if I go to the McLeod. There's water that makes sense for all of them. I'm usually carrying around 3 rods that are all ready to go. But like, how would you set up? Like, what would you set up line wise to be the most versatile?
What I would do is, on my reel, I would have some kind of floating fly line. So say I had one of my rods, say it's a 10-foot 4-weight. I would have some kind of 4-weight floating line on there with a leader, like regular standard bucket leader on there that you could dry fly fish with, right? But you could either keep the loop on your fly line, which is what I would probably do for most people. Just keep that loop up, switch keep a mono leader, or like a mono rig Euro type of leader on some kind of foam, like a
little spool,
balloon rigging foam things,
Yeah.
So say you have 50 foot of mono, wrap that up on something, and then if you wanted to tight line, like say you wanted a Euro nymph, boom, just switch out your leader so that you're not touching your fly line when you go to Euro nymph, and then switch that out if you wanted to dry fly fish, right? You just put a standard kind of like 9-foot 4X tapered leader on there or something, whatever you got, you know what I mean?
And throw a sink tip on if you want to toss the streamer or something.
Tip on there if you want, or fish the mono for streamers, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Which is what I normally do. Actually, is I fish the mono rig with streamers instead of a sinking line or a floating line.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were fishing an eye line, intermediate.
Oh
line.
yeah, intermediate line. Yeah.
With the boat, but when I'm wade fishing, I'm usually fishing like the mono type of rigs.
Okay.
With streamers, So you could do that with one reel, right? I mean, you just have to have some kind of something to put these other leaders on and switch them out,
Yeah.
If it takes 5 minutes to do that, you know what I mean? Or have a couple different reels. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that's like an option, or spools or something too. And that's kind of what, that's kind of what I do is I just switch my shit out,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really take very long actually. And you can still just fish one reel and one rod.
Yeah. Are these all 10-foot 4 weights, or are you doing other stuff too?
10-foot 4 weights and 5 weights for now. I might do a 6 weight, like a 10-foot 6 weight. But for now, like, the 5 weight will fish big 1/8 ounce jig streamers and, bobber, any kind of bobber type of rig. So will the 4 weight too, actually, if you want to bobber fish with them, great,
Yeah. I think I heard you say that you don't fish the Truckee with rods that are shorter than 10 foot. Did I hear that right?
Yeah. And I think that's like, like a 9-foot 5-weight fly rod it's like the lie of the white man, right? Like you go into a fly shop and they sell you a 9-foot 5-weight fly rod, but like I don't understand why, because if they just sold you a 10-foot 5-weight fly rod, just think what you'd have. You'd have a rod that you could indicate a nymph with, way better. You could have a rod that you could dabble with Euro nymphing in, and you could still streamer fish, you could still dry fly fish with, because you have that extra length, So I never understand why the 9-foot rod is so popular, because it's not a better rod, it's just a more popular rod.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I mean,
a 10-foot rod is a way better tool. Like,
yeah, I wonder if it's like just like, fishing amongst in cover and stuff like that. I mean, that's the only time it makes sense to like have a shorter rod for me. I don't know.
It doesn't, even that really, I don't think makes any sense. A good thing to listen to that I just listened to was like the Tom Rosenbauer podcast, and he just recently did an interview with George Daniel.
Okay.
And he talks about 10-foot rods, and I think it's great what he says about them. Now, I think we fish a little differently. He's fishing like mono with, he's fishing mono rigs with very thin mono rigs nowadays, and my rigs are heavier than his. But for what he's talking about, and what he talks about 10-foot rods, I think is great. It's like there's really no reason, if you're trout fishing, probably to buy a 9-foot rod, actually, no matter where you fish. So it's a good interview, I think, to listen to.
Yeah, I'll check that out for sure.
Check it out. I don't know. Like, he's kind of the guru, the hero guru, right? So
Rosenbauer is the guru, right? And I was just thinking the other day that maybe Davy McPhail should be the guru.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as far as tiring goes, I always feel like he gets shit like he's a cornball or something like that. I don't know, but I watch tons of his videos. I always get something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Anytime you watch something, I think you get something out of it. Fuck. Yeah.
And multiple people I've interviewed have mentioned Davy McPhail as being like the guy that started them. Like watching.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Really. So where can folks get one of these rods? Are they available to buy yet? Like,
yeah, I mean, I just haven't really been. I mean, like, I don't have like a Shopify or any of that shit. Like,
is that in the cards?
Yeah, I don't want it to get too big. Actually, like I just like. I might do like a little like link tree thing,
Sure. Yeah.
On my Instagram, and when I build some rods, I'll just sell them. But it's not not a big thing, man. Like it's just, they're all handmade by me, So it takes a couple days to build a rod, so I can't get too big, honestly.
You're like an artisan. You're like an artisan pizza guy, man. Like you just make them and they're gone. They're sold out. You're gonna have to wait.
So, and people have been like getting hold on me on Instagram and shit, and so like I'm building some for some people right now,
Cool.
Yeah, like, and they've never even fucking cast them yet, but I think they'll be stoked,
Yeah. Well, like I said, watching you, lack for a better term, sell them on your Instagram and stuff. It's like it makes so much sense. You make them look like they do what they are supposed to do.
Yeah, like there's not a good. I don't feel like there's a good 10-foot 4-weight or 5-weight out there. I mean, there are some pretty good ones, like I like the Scott Radiant, I like the old Sage one. But when you get into these real Euro specific rods, like they're so soft on the tips usually that they're just hard to fish. If you go into anything heavy, or if you go to a standard fly line with them, they don't fish them very well. And you don't need all that sensitivity really. You just don't need you don't need a fucking floppy ass rod to feel everything. You don't need all that sensitivity actually.
You're right too. I have a Euro rod. It's a 10-foot 3-weight. I want to say
Okay.
it's an Echo. Forget which one it is, but it really does feel like that's all it's gonna do. And
It's good. Maybe you'll fish some tiny dry flies with it somewhere, but
yeah,
you get a fucking 25-inch brownout on the Truckee River current, dude. Like you're done.
yeah,
right?
totally.
Experience a brand new way to enjoy digital finance with WetBank. WetBank is an online-only bank and investment management system which allows you to keep your money safe while generating incredible returns. All you have to do is open an account online, which requires a minimum initial deposit of just $75,000. After that, you can select from over 2 investment portfolios into which you'd like to put your savings. And that's it. Also, as a listener of the Secret Society of Fly Tires, you'll be able to have the honor of having 85% of your holdings funneled directly into this podcast. No, you won't be a part owner or shareholder, but you can feel good knowing that your money is being used to fund such high-quality educational entertainment. And if the podcast ever starts generating money, you'll be welcome to enjoy up to 0.001% of the proceeds as a member of WetBank. It's a truly perfect system, so please open an account with WetBank today and enjoy the benefits of a non-federally insured bank that gives 85% of your deposited money directly to the host of the Secret Society of Fly Tires. The future of finance is here. WetBank.
You know what I mean?
My buddy Steve had the same rod, and he busted the tip because he had it in his teeth. It was it's like it barely did anything to it. And
yeah, they're fucking. Some of those rods, dude, just look at and they break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you look at them too long, they just stare at them, they just fucking break. Same with the leaders and shit. Like some of these micro leaders that people are fishing now, it's like they would last 10 minutes out here, dude. Like on the Truckee, 10 minutes they'd be fucking done, and they snap in half, and then you're not even fishing. So I think there's a rod for every occasion. A lot of this shit, dude, that comes a lot of these rods, a lot of these innovations come from the East Coast,
okay,
or the Midwest, and not on these big Western trout rivers,
Yeah.
I think it's different. And they say you could fish this shit on these, we'll take them out to the Madison and fish and everything. And I think for most average anglers, they probably need something a little heavier,
Mm-hmm. So they're called Truckee speed rods, right?
Yeah, it's just a stupid name that I came up with. So speed rods, like they could do it all, right?
Yeah, it works, man. It's cool. It's cool. The logo's cool too. And
some dude do it. This dude named Ant Sanders. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right on. I thought it might have been a real small world there because I know a graphic designer named Ant also, but that's not him.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
But don't be fooled. They're good for many other rivers than the Truckee. If they're that versatile.
Oh, dude, you'd go up and fish any California, anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go take them to the Henry's Fork and fish dry flies with them or whatever,
I'm gonna have to come up and try them with you, dude. I'm stoked to see one.
Yeah, I got a demo rod. So fish it.
Are you keeping one in your boat now? You letting folks fish that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on.
Absolutely. Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You got the primo stick for it. Why not?
Yeah, fuck yeah. Let people fish it. They don't. I don't need to fish. No, there's other rods. There's great other rods out there. Like this isn't the greatest fucking rod out there. I'm just pretty stoked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on to this fly that we were. I guess it's just a single pattern that we were throwing the same stuff the whole time I was fishing with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big articulated streamers without a name. They have two hooks on them.
Yep. And they're tied on jig hooks, right? So they're tied on a pre-molded jig hook,
Okay, yeah.
I
thought that might be the case. I didn't know if it was a bead. I didn't look that close at it.
Yeah, it's like pre-molded, so it's lead. They're made on Wapsi hooks or Wapsi jig heads. Wapsi makes them, right?
Yeah.
And they're mustad hooks, which are really good, strong hooks. And then, so years, it wasn't, let's see, I started fishing those at about 2000. I started fishing the little ones in about 2013 at Pyramid Lake, right? The little ones on little marabou jigs on a floating line. And everybody's out there bobber fishing basically on all the beaches, So fishing these two little jigs, and I was just crushing them,
No bobber.
No bobber, just
Yeah.
retrieving them on a really long leader,
Okay.
like a 20-foot leader. They worked so well out there. I was like, man, if I tied them bigger, like I'm sure they would work on the Truckee, like why aren't they doing that? And because I was in the mindset of fishing like a sink tip and an unweighted type of Kelly Gallup style fly.
Mhm.
So flies that like swim and not jig, right? And so then I started getting the bigger jigs from Wapsie and fishing them on about 10 or 15-foot leaders on the Truckee River on a floating line, regular rod, whatever, 9-foot, 10-foot rod, 5 or 6 weight or something. And I started catching more fish, because they were like, I don't know what it was doing. It was just like jigging more or, I have no idea, but I did catch a lot more fish. And to be honest, that's when my streamer fishing really began. It was like, okay, I'm consistently catching fish on streamers. Let's just kind of like make this a better fly now, and evolve it to how we can catch more fish. And then I started articulating.
Okay. So I was going to ask, was it articulated when you were throwing it at Pyramid, or was it just a single stage one?
Ones, They were like 1/64th ounce jig hooks, so not super heavy, just enough to be able to cast them, like with a really long leader like that, on a beach and on a floating line. So now I tie them on like 1/8 ounce jig hooks, which are pretty heavy. 1/8 ounce is pretty heavy, They're probably size 4, size 6 hooks. And then I'll articulate them, And so not only do they jig, but it's like our articulation, the back hook, it's like a keel on a surfboard, it makes it like swim and move in the water, right?
Yeah.
So when you pull it, it jerks down on the paws, and it also swims side to side. So
yeah,
fucking drives them nuts, like it.
Yeah, there's movement all the time. Yeah.
There's movement all the time in it, And if you retrieve them faster, they'll swim. If you pause them more, they'll jig, When I'm wade fishing, I will fish that 1/8 ounce articulated jig streamer on usually like some kind of mono rig setup. So like not really a weight forward line, but like a Euro line.
Are you dead drifting them instead of stripping them and
No,
stuff?
I'm still stripping them, but I'm fishing them more like a spinning rod personally.
Okay,
right?
all right, yeah.
More like a spinning rod kind of.
Yeah.
I'm still retrieving them and everything, like with like a fly, like a regular fly type of streamer retrieve. So like I would use a Euro line, a needle nail knot, 15-pound maximum chameleon, about 10 to 15 feet, and then some kind of tippet, swivel or tippet ring to some tippet. So it's very thin. The whole connection's a pretty thin line, right?
Pretty smooth, yeah.
Yeah, pretty smooth, pretty thin. And the weight of the streamer is casting it out as instead of like the weight of the fly line.
Yeah. It sounds like tossing a spoon or something, yeah.
Like tossing a spoon,
Yeah.
So it's kind of borderline fly fishing, spin fishing, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
But when you're wade fishing, I only need to cast sometimes 10 feet or 15 feet. And so sometimes I could just pop it out, without even really making a back cast. And I can then retrieve it conventionally with my tip down, like you normally would with streamers, or I could tight line nymph it, like Euro nymphing, or I could pop it and do a jerk retrieve. So there's multiple options you could do, and you could set it up Euro nymphing style with the nymph above the streamer if you want to.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things you can do.
You end up using it as like a heavy point fly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I just use, and so that's, since I fish like that a lot and I Euro nymph a lot and I fish with a dry dropper rig a lot, that's where these rods came from. It's like, I want to fish everything with one rod,
Yeah.
I don't want to be specific to having this noodly rod that has all the sensitivity when I'm Euro nymphing, but then when I want to fish something else, I can't switch over. I have to have another rod with me.
Right.
Which is what I have now. Now I don't have to. I can have one rod,
Yeah, that's rad.
And one reel if I want to, and I can fish any style I want,
So,
and sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do fish the Euro rig, like the mono rig type of style, and the 1/8 ounce streamers from the boat. I just don't always hand it to people that haven't done it before, because it kind of fucks them up at first. You know what I'm saying? Like
Okay,
sometimes it's a little better with like a floating line or an intermediate line or something from the boat with those big heavy flies, right? But
yeah, it takes getting used to casting from a boat for everybody. I think that doesn't do it all the time.
yeah,
I mean, no matter what the rig is, it takes a little
it
bit.
doesn't matter what the rig is. Yeah, sometimes people are great anglers and they've never casted from a boat, and you know it takes them a couple hours to like get used to it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's great for when you're wade fishing, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, 90% of anglers probably wade fish. You know.
Yeah. That's definitely what I do. Definitely what I do the most too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it crushes it, and it's gained popularity. It's definitely. I think there's you see a lot of more. I mean, I look at people's fly boxes now, and they got all kinds of jig streamers in it. You know.
Yeah, a lot of jig nymphs. I think that's kind of really become the thing now.
That's the huge thing. You know, every nymph is tied on a jig. But the streamer thing too now is that there's a lot of tied on. You know, a lot of them are tied on jigs. You know, and jig style hooks, and I think that's what a lot of people are switching to. You know, they ride hook point up, and they have a lot of action in them. You know, I mean, it's like a Rapala in the water. You know.
Yeah, those ones of yours that we were fishing to are heavy too. I mean, they sink real quick.
Yeah, like I don't want to see when I'm usually fishing. If I'm fishing the river here, you know, Truckee, I don't really want to see the fly after like 2 strips. You know, if I still see the fly after 5 or 6 strips, then you know my fly is probably not in the zone, right?
Not deep enough. Yeah.
It's not deep enough. Now trout are looking up to see their prey, but still, it's still too high in the water column. I feel like so. I don't like to see it after like usually 2 strips, right? Boom, boom, and then I kind of don't want to see that fly anymore. Really, you know. Even if it's bright, I don't want it to sink because a lot of the banks here and a lot of the shit is 5, 6, 4, 5, 6 feet deep, right? Off the bank. So I don't want to see it after a while, you know.
Well, I posted a picture when we were out fishing of the fly. I like posting those too, especially if I don't catch any fish, but we caught a big old fish. Can you run down your recipe like the best you can, over audio of like how you do one of those? Because I'll tell you, like when I was looking at it, it was hard for me to kind of deconstruct it just in hand, like what you did. I remember asking you a couple questions on the boat, and I was dead wrong.
Yeah, so like you could tie the back hook, right? Say you want to articulate, tie the back hook on anything you want, like any kind of.
Is it like a little Waddington shank?
Yeah, you could. No, I mean I usually don't use that a lot. I usually will use like wire or braid to articulate my stuff, and then I'll put a bead on the.
Oh, to connect them. I thought you were talking about the back part, like that back portion.
Sorry. So the back portion, just use any kind of hook you want, any kind of fucking nymph hook.
Okay, so that's just tied onto a hook. The back end of it is a hook too.
Yeah, yeah, and then so I always usually use rabbit strip, right? You could use marabou, but I like the action of the rabbit strip better. So you could use you could tie them white, olive, whatever color you want, right? So, for instance, we used white, so I would use a white rabbit strip in the back, white or gray or something. Boom, put that on the hook. Tie it in. You're going to have it ride hook point up. So, put the rabbit strip on there, hook point up, tie that in. And then you want to you're dubbing. I use a lot of flash in my streamers. So before I started tying these jig streamers, the only success I really had out here was on the Sparkle Minnow, coffee Sparkle Minnow. You seen that fly?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking
really
about.
Really popular in Montana, and I was catching a lot of fish on the Truckee on coffee Sparkle Minnow, right? So I wanted to kind of mimic that flashiness, so I said, okay, well, fuck, what's the best thing? I'm just going to use all ice stuff,
Okay.
So most of my flies are made out of a lot of ice stuff,
Yeah.
Or whatever, like different companies have their different brands of ice stuff. So I would tie that back hook in, tie that in, and then tie that in, boom, articulate it with braid or wire, put the bead in there, put it on the front hook. And your front hook is one of those Wapsi jig hooks, right? And they're Wapsi super jigs. So they're unpainted unpainted lead, right?
Yeah, raw lead. Yeah.
They have two kinds. If you go buy the ones that are paint or the gold, they have really shitty like gold, and they're probably eagle claw hooks.
Okay.
They're probably super shitty. Like they'll fucking bend if you look at them, you know. So you gotta get the good mustad hooks if you're gonna buy the pre-made, you know, the Waxy like that.
Mm-hmm.
So to tie these things, this is how you'll tie the back fly too, right? When you've done that, get ice dub or whatever fucking brand you want. You know, it doesn't matter. You can do some like streamer brushes too in there. You know, there's all kinds of different streamer brushes.
That's what I thought you were doing when I first saw it.
You can use a little bit of that and a little bit of ice dub or whatever you want to like kind of bring that bulk up with, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is take a big old clump of fucking ice dubbing out of there, and you can mix your ice dubbings up if you want to blend them with other ice dubbings in a coffee grinder. You know, I mean,
get real creative, yeah.
You know, so but like take a big chunk and just take a chunk of it out of the package and lash it on the top of the hook, just like you would with deer hair or something, right?
Okay,
Lash it on the top, spin the hook over in your vise, and lash on the bottom part, and then pull it back.
Like another chunk?
Yeah, like another chunk. And then slide it back with your fingers and tie it in, you know, to the front, just like you would with deer hair.
Okay.
And then boom. Do it again in the middle, do the top, do the bottom, do that, pull it back, and then do the top of the fly, right?
Yeah, how are you finishing it up at the very top there?
I usually put some legs in there, some rubber legs or something.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really it. I mean, you can make it all ice dubbing if you want and pick it out. Like I'll usually just pull it out with my hands.
Yeah, it looks long. It looks long for dubbing for sure.
Yeah, like I pull it out with my hands and then I use a dog hair brush with steel bristles on it.
Yeah.
And then comb it out, you know, and it'll comb out and the dubbing will be really long. And like, so you could make one out of all ice dubbing if you wanted to. But a lot of times I'll dub it or I'll put it in a coffee grinder with other ice dubbing and tweak the colors a little bit, you know, and I mean, you could go any color you wanted to, you know, right? I mean,
yeah. That was what I was going to ask you. Is like we were tossing real natural, bright, flashy stuff, but all real natural colors. Do you fuck around with brighter, you know, out there colors and stuff?
Not really. Like it's you know, like I'll fish, you know, white, black, olive, yellow, and maybe brown. Those are usually my colors, but not super out of this world. You know, like something that does mimic prey. You know what I mean? Like not. Like it's so fucking flashy that they turn off of it, you know.
It's not fluorescent blue and purple. And
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not fishing red or fucking fluorescent blue or anything like that. It's got to look like a sculpin or a crayfish,
right? Yeah, or
a bait fish. We have a lot of Lahont red side shiners in the river in Nevada, and so sculpin, crayfish, shiners. You know, that kind of. All I'm fishing, really, you know, right? And sculpins can be black in color. They can be really dark olive. Sometimes they're yellowishy. You know, they're all kinds of fucking different colors, you know? So, but those fish, when they get to a certain size, they're fucking not eating them little midges anymore.
They're
right?
hungry. They want the big thing.
Yeah, they're eating each other and they're eating, you know, a higher protein meal, you know?
Yeah. I just saw some video on Instagram the other day flipping through that showed a giant brown trout. I think the point of the video was saying that stock trout do eat wild trout. I think was the point of the video that somebody posted.
Oh, do they?
But it was a giant brown trout with like a smaller brown trout, just like dog bone style in his mouth, just like swimming down the river.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I bet should, you know, who knows? I mean, what's going on down there when we're not watched? It's probably crazy, right? It's animal kingdom, you know, like they're fucking.
Yeah, have you gone as far as opening up or pumping fish bellies, you know, to get to see what's going on in there? Or is it just kind of obvious what's happening?
I used to do that sometimes, and I kind of felt bad, you know.
Yeah.
But you can feel them in the summertime with the crayfish in them, you know.
Oh, you can tell.
One.
Yeah.
And a lot of fish, a lot of brown trout that I've caught have coughed up other fish. You know?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So you know what they're eating when they got something half eaten.
Totally.
And, you know, like in their throat. And it's always a trip, you know. And it's always I try to take a picture because it's always so cool. see that, it's just
That's
like,
super cool.
oh man, they just have this fish in their mouth, and yet they're eating another fish that, but just your fly, right?
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, man, these things are crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy predator fish, I mean, brown trout are crazy. They're nuts,
Yeah, man, I was so pumped to get one up there. Like I've fished for 7 or 8 years or something, and hadn't ever really put in an effort to. I mean, I fished the McLeod, but somehow never caught a brown trout there, and there's a bunch of them there too.
Right.
And yeah, just never kind of put myself in the position, and I finally was like, I gotta go. And so of course I call you.
That's rad.
But so are you still tinkering with the recipe for that fly, or do you think you have it in a spot that like it's doing what it's supposed to do?
It's good to go. Like, I've never tied it commercially. Like, it's never been tied commercially, but so many people have copied it now that I don't even probably call it my own anymore. So
man, that makes me want to call it your own even more, though.
Yeah,
like there's no name for it.
Yeah. It doesn't even really matter. Like, years ago, I got a bunch of flies tied by Solitude, and it's great, but it was like a feather in the cap type of thing, and now it's just like, fuck. Like,
yeah.
I'd be, honestly, there's way more better fly tires than me nowadays. And,
yeah, I feel like we didn't talk fly tying a whole lot on our last interview.
Yeah.
We were talking about the Truckee, the river.
Yeah, right, right.
And it's not like I didn't think that you had the skills. I mean, I don't, but like when I was fishing with you, like I was really, really stoked on those flies and was just kind of staring at them every chance I could get.
Oh, that's rad. Yeah. I feel like that's something that was unique to me that I didn't copy from somebody, I feel like a lot of my other flies have copied probably from somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
Just tweaked them a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And tweaked them a little bit, but that was something that was unique to myself, and I didn't know of anybody fishing these big jig streamers, so, and now, like I said, I look at people's fly boxes, and so many people talk shit about them, and then I go
about what?
Box. Well, because they think that you're not fly fishing with these big jig streamers, right?
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then they have them in their box, and I'm like, fuck, dude, like you talk so much shit, and now it's in your box.
God, I hate that stuff, man. I can't. I don't give a shit what you're trying
I don't
to
either.
use, like
the holier than thou stuff, and to comment on people's shit when just don't even say anything.
I think it's super cool when those worlds kind of learn from each other, and apply the stuff, that one does to the other. Blaine Chocolate is a great example, right? With the Game Changer and other stuff that he's done. It's all coming from that world, right?
I mean, I've taken some. I'll guide spin angler dudes out. Yeah, fuck yeah. And I learned from those guys. Like, if you get a good guy, like a guy that's really good with a spinning rod, and like he fishes Rapalas or like some kind of jerk bait or crank bait or something. I mean, those guys crush them, and you're like, how are they catching more fish?
Yeah, totally.
Than I am with streamers. Like these guys were fishing these broken back crayfish Rapalas one day.
Yeah.
And I mean, they caught so many fish, and I'm not saying they were all big fish, but they were like,
the fish wanted to eat them. Yeah.
And I was like, how did they do that? Because if I was out here streamer fishing, I may get a few if I'm lucky. But these guys got a lot on these, on these Rapalas, and I was like, what are they doing? And so I learned a lot that day. Yeah, but those guys fucking crush them, dude. Those Rapalas and stuff, like.
Yeah, I mean, do you know JD Ritchie? You familiar with JD? He's up there in South Lake Tahoe now, fishes Tahoe and Pyramid. But he was down in the valley here doing salmon and stuff for a lot of years. And I've probably fished with him more than any other guide. And I swear I've fished like every method with him. Every different pulling plugs to bait to fly fishing to
that's cool.
Throwing rubber worms on a fly rod. And stuff like that, like bass worms and stuff. Like, I mean, there's always something to learn, and stepping out of your comfort zone and just trying something different. There's little pieces that you pull.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to be all holier than thou.
No.
There's a lot to learn from other people, especially non-fly fishermen people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No room for that shit.
It's not. It's silly. And,
Well, Gilligan, I always ask my guests if they have paranormal experiences, but you already answered that question. So I have a new question for you.
All right.
And I actually had Jonathan Farmer on. I interviewed him earlier too, who's a return guest as well. And I think this might be my my return guest question because I'm super into it right now. But the question I'm asking is, do you believe in giants, like giant humans?
Well, so after watching the fucking what's that History Channel show, Ancient Aliens? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't seen Ancient Aliens in a while. I don't have TV anymore. But
They
are they going into giants? Yeah.
Yeah, they've like uncovered giant humans in certain places.
Well, you're in kind of a hotbed. I don't know if you understood this, but I'm looking at a news article right now this is from the St. Paul Globe, January 24th, 1904. Bones of a human skeleton 11 feet high dug up in Nevada. And it's Winnemucca. I don't know if you've heard these.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard that. I'll Google it.
Well, Winnemucca and the Lovelock Cave. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Wow. So that was, when I was a kid, we lived in Lovelock for a while.
Oh, yeah? Man. Yeah.
That's interesting. Interesting is
middle of nowhere. It feels like it's just like a truck stop,
Dude, there was nothing there back then. I mean, like you go through there now and there's still nothing. There's a skate park there now, but there's nothing there back then, dude.
So here's the article. Workmen engaged in digging gravel here today uncovered at a depth of about 12 feet a lot of bones, part of a skeleton of a gigantic human being. Dr. Samuels examined them and pronounced them to be the bones of a man who must have been nearly 11 feet in height. The metacarpal bones measure 4.5 inches in length and are large in proportion. A part of the ulna was found in its complete form, would have been 17 and 18 inches in length. The remainder of the skeleton is being searched for. And I mean, it's really it's a thing that's popping up now. I read a lot of weird shit,
So like you've seen it more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it all over the place. There's a lot of, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, there's lots of stuff. I think with Jonathan Farmer, we were talking about Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln mentions giant humans in his diary after he went to Niagara Falls, right?
Oh, whoa, really?
Which is a weird thing. That's it's kind of contested because people think he was talking about mammoth bones. But if you read the whole diary, that's completely separate from what he's talking about. He's definitely referring to giant humans. And the big overall conspiracy theory there is that the Smithsonian and other institutions like that have collected these things and like kept them under wraps and secreted them away,
Do you think that these are extraterrestrial, alien origin, or are they human?
I don't think they're aliens. And I think that from what I've been reading about, the thing that makes the most sense, and it's all out there, wild, weird stuff. So, take it with a grain of salt. But it feels like there was maybe in general, the human race might have been bigger at some point in our history that maybe, we don't talk about. There's a lot of signs that point to that people were just bigger in general, and maybe animals and stuff too, just to go along with it.
Is it like and then maybe before the Ice Age and then after the Ice Age or something.
Yeah, and then if you want to get real weird, you go into fallen angels, which the Bible talks about them in the film being like the sons of God. It was like it's the offspring of angels with human women, is what it's referred to, and there's all sorts of theories out there related to that, like these are remnants of those, or
we could have come from like another galaxy. Even like life as we know it could have came from Mars,
Sure.
And I think that's why we're trying to explore Mars, actually, is because all it would have taken is a fucking comet or an asteroid from Mars to impact Earth and put life on Earth. And that's probably why they're looking for life on Mars.
Yeah.
So they talk about fallen angels and shit. It's like, could have been fucking aliens and shit,
Could have been. It could have been. Man, I've gone so all over the place with my feelings, my own personal feelings on aliens and from outer space, other planets and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm more starting to feel like that that's too straightforward, you know.
Right.
Like, I think it's way weirder than that. Like, I think there's some spiritual elements to this whole idea of aliens. I think there's also probably something even weirder, like interdimensional stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't like the idea of some advanced civilization like going all the way across space and then just crashing on our planet. You know, like
Well,
they're that advanced, but they run out of gas or crash when they get to Earth.
They crash. They
Yeah.
get to Earth. There's a lot of weird shit.
Yeah.
Like, there's a Netflix thing that's like that Ancient Aliens show that you should see.
What is it?
It's I forgot the name of it, but he's like some scholar, scientist guy, and you'd have to search it. But it's about that. It's about like he goes and examines all these ancient archaeological sites all around the world.
No, I love that stuff, man.
And he thinks that all life has come from somewhere out there, came to Earth and gave us life. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I'm open to anything.
And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like how the fuck did they make the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
They didn't just fucking put those rocks up there. Like, they had help. There's no doubt about it.
I was reading something, and again, I read very weird things, and I was reading something that made a good case that the pyramids and stuff were there when the Egyptians got there. They're that old.
Like, so that's just been disputed. Like, they're way older than people think. They could be like 20,000, 30,000 years old.
Big can of worms. Yeah.
It's a big old can of worms. And like, they didn't fucking build that shit, like, with sticks and fucking slaves. Like,
yeah, I don't think so either. I don't really buy the alien building it part, but I think there's something else, and giant humans could explain that too.
Yeah. It's like, we don't know. And the reason why we don't know is because I think it fucks with people's faith of God and religion and shit. So that's why they keep that shit from us, because they want everybody to go to church. And
or you could take it the other way and use this new alien religion as exactly what it kind of sounds like. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of being trained to that aliens created all this stuff, and it's its own religion, and that maybe that's even trying to take everyone away from the other religions. This is a can of worms that's way too
a whole nother podcast.
way too much for us to talk about.
What are you doing talking about fly fishing? We could talk about
I know,
like life, how it's yeah.
If you don't think that's what this is going to eventually devolve into, you're wrong.
That's great.
It's just.
I've watched so many ancient aliens shows that I could be I want to be the first person on. So.
Would you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, when we change this over to the secret society of weird of everything weird, you're going to be the first guest.
Yeah, I'll compile all my data.
Yes, get all your data together. I'll bring out my spreadsheets.
Yeah.
We'll do it.
Yeah,
right on, man.
Well, was that all right? Cool.
Yeah, thank you, Gilligan. Man, that's great. Man, it's perfect. And
thanks for hyping. I mean, thanks for helping me out, dude. That's killer.
Dude, of course. And so if anybody wants to get one of these rods, they got to talk to you.
You got to talk to me. Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Well, your link's going to be in the show notes if they don't know how to get to you.
Sweet.
And man, I can't wait to see how these things evolve. And,
I'll have to get you one, dude, so that you can fish it.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Or at least to get you up here to fish one or something.
Yeah. I want to come up there and wade fish with you, dude. I want to get the other side.
Let's just do it sometime, dude. Like, and this time of year, I'm not doing much, really.
Yeah.
I mean, this week I'm doing some guiding, but then after that, it's so mellow. So
right on.
If you have some time during the day, during the week, dude, we could just go out and fish.
I'm going to take some time off work around Christmas. I'll holler at you.
Yeah, holler at me.
As long as my car can make it up there. I drive a Prius. So I don't know.
Yeah, you got to time it right. It's going to rain this winter a lot, I think. So
think so, yeah.
I think so. So I think it'll be smooth sailing.
No 20 feet of snow up at your house this year?
Then we're going to get a lot of rain.
Yeah.
Yeah. From what it looks like, it's like, I think it's going to rain more than it snows, which, fuck, I don't care,
Maybe it's better than digging out.
It's better than fucking digging all that snow, dude. It was depressing, So hit me up, dude. I mean, we'll just go fish and hang out, dude. And, we could go to town and get a beer or something. So
yeah. We'll go ahead. We'll have a beer. We'll talk.
But I appreciate it, dude. Like to have me back and fucking talk about my rods and shit. I mean, that's killer. You got the prisoner in prison, Nevada. It looks like Nevada County Jail.
You think so?
Yeah.
You would know.
Yeah, I would know. So.
Well, thanks again, man. I hope to talk to you soon. I'll hit you up. I want to fish with you in December, man.
Well, hit me up and just holler at me, dude, during Christmas break because I'm gonna be here, and we'll just head out, dude.
I'm gonna. You better believe it.
No pressure,
All right.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, man. Have a good night.
You too. Peace.
All right, buddy. Peace out.
Later. Hell yeah. That is the second of 2 great interviews with Gil. If you missed the first one, go back into the archives to season 1 and find episode 8 on the Truckee River. He is filled to the tippity top with knowledge, and I learn something every time I talk to him. Buy one of his rods, tie up one of his flies, hire him to take you fishing on the Truckee. None of these things will disappoint you. If you don't know how to find him, I'll make sure to link to him in the show notes. I realized I almost forgot to update you all on my efforts to quit smoking. Well, I haven't really put any effort into it, so I don't have much of an update. But I will say that smoking helped me land that big brown trout with Gilligan that I mentioned earlier in the episode. Yeah, I went most of the day without hooking anything while my buddy Steve roped in one after another, and I finally took a little breather to fill my smoke tank with the soothing effects of the jazz kind of cigarette, and shortly after that I got my fish. I hadn't been managing my vibe correctly, and Mother Nature knew it. As soon as my tank was full, I marveled at some wild mustangs on the riverbank and brought a beaut of a brown trout to the net. And the universe is definitely aware of my plans to quit, too. Because a lot of people are starting to ask me, when are you going to quit? And I tell them I am, okay, let me have 7 more episodes or whatever. Leave me alone.
I just want to be left alone.
And they go, what do you mean episodes? And I tell them, never mind, forget about it. Now, just like Jonathan Farmer, I didn't want to ask Gilligan if he had any paranormal or supernatural experiences to share because he had already answered that in our first interview. So I asked Gilligan about giants, and his part of the state actually has one of my favorite stories. Technically not in California or Truckee, but in Nevada, so close enough. I'm talking about the red-haired giants of Lovelock. We yapped about them for a minute during the interview, but I figured I'd save you some searching and tell you a little bit more about them before I end the episode. So was North America once inhabited by a race of giants?
If they are, we all be dead.
I'm going to answer that myself with a yes in all capital letters. According to an old legend supported by several challenging archaeological finds, it is possible. Many Native American tribes tell stories about the long-forgotten existence of a race of humans that were much taller and stronger than ordinary men. These giants are described as both brave and barbaric, and legends often mention their cruelty towards whomever they please. The Paiute, a tribe that settled in the Nevada region thousands of years ago, have an outstanding legend about a race of red-haired giants called the Sitka. In the northern Paiute language, Sitka literally means tule eaters. Legend has it that the giants came from a distant island by crossing the ocean on rafts built using the fibrous tule plant. As odd as it may sound, this legend repeats itself all over the Americas, suggesting that it might be an incomplete chronicle of a real event that happened long ago. In Crónicas del Perú, 16th century Spanish conquistador Pedro Cieza de León recorded an ancient Peruvian tale about the origin of the South American giants. According to that legend, they, quote, came by sea in rafts of reeds after the manner of large boats. Some of the men were so tall that from the knee down they were as big as the length of an ordinary-sized man. Could the giants of Peru and the Sitka have been survivors of a massive cataclysm who took refuge on the American continent? Legend tells that the Sitka waged war on the Paiute and all other neighboring tribes, spreading terror and devastation. Finally, after years of conflict, the tribes united against a common enemy and began to decimate them. The last remaining red-haired giants were chased off and sought shelter inside a cave. The tribe started a fire at the cave entrance, suffocating and burning alive the Sitka. Those driven out by the smoke were also killed. In 1886, a mining engineer named John T. Reed happened to hear the legend from a group of Paiutes while prospecting near Lovelock, Nevada. The Indians told him that the legend was real and the cave was located nearby. When he saw the cave for himself, Reed knew he was onto something. Reed was unable to begin digging himself, but news spread and soon Lovelock Cave was attracting attention. Unfortunately, the attention was profit-driven as guano deposits were discovered inside. A company started by miners David Pugh and James Hart began excavating the precious resource in 1911 and had soon shipped more than 250 tons to a fertilizer company in San Francisco. Any artifacts that might have been discovered were probably neglected or lost or stolen and hidden by the Smithsonian. After the surface layer of guano had been mined, strange objects started to surface. Why is guano such a big part of this? This led to an official excavation being performed in 1912 by the University of California, and another one took place in 1924. Reports told about thousands of artifacts being recovered, some of them being truly unusual. Measuring between 8 to 10 feet in height, these mummies have since been referred to as the Lovelock Giants.
I am back at Lovelock Cave, searching for the red-headed cannibal giants of Lovelock Cave, as mentioned by Sarah Winnemucca in her book, Life Amongst the Paiutes. My last video out here got over 230,000 views, but I have brought something that's going to blow the lid off of this cave. This is the 1929 archaeological report by Loud and Harrington of UC Berkeley. In this archaeological report, which I discovered, there's actual mention of them finding giants in this cave.
One piece of evidence that remains on site until this day is a giant handprint embedded on a boulder inside Lovelock Cave. Around the same time as the second Lovelock Cave excavation, another dig revealed a set of equally disturbing finds. They surprisingly found a trove of old ammo boxes containing giant porno mags filled with nude images of giant women with huge, giant-sized breasts, which proved to be even more valuable than all the bat guano, and were also confiscated by the Smithsonian. According to a 1931 article published in the Nevada Review Minor, 2 giant skeletons had been found buried in a dry lake bed close to Lovelock, Nevada, too. Those oversized remains measured around 10 feet in height and were mummified in a manner similar to the one employed by ancient Egyptians. Another common trait between these mummified giant remains and the ones discovered as far south as Lake Titicaca is the presence of red hair. While some scientists believe the reddish color is a result of the interaction with the environment in which they were buried, the mummies verify the legends, which describe the Sitica and their kin as red-haired giants. Proponents of alternate history believe these violent giants were none other than the biblical Nephilim, the offspring of the sons of God with the daughters of men. Wow, we covered a lot in this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I sincerely appreciate you all listening. Stay tuned for another episode in a couple weeks. Just like I've been doing for the previous episodes of Season 3, here are a few things that I've been enjoying that I wanted to share with you. First one is Cancel This Clothing Company. I'll be honest and say I don't know if Cancel This Clothing Company even sells clothes. They probably do, but I'm just into his social media content. His bio is simple. It reads, "Follow the money, seek the truth, do your own research." The guy posts some of the most thoroughly researched conspiracy content that I've ever seen. Right now, as I'm recording this, he's been going deep into the P. Diddy sexual blackmail conspiracy and digging up some seriously good stuff. Well, not good stuff, bad stuff. But he doesn't always focus on dark stuff like that. He'll also run you through the grocery store and show you which corporations actually own the products on the shelves. It's all really interesting stuff, and like I said, the guy does his research and provides the proof behind his claims. Check him out on whatever social media platform you like, because he's on all of them. Although I think YouTube may have banned him recently. I love it. One of my new favorites. Next up is a book called John Dee and the Empire of Angels by Jason Louv. It's a comprehensive look at the life and continuing influence of 16th century scientific genius and occultist Dr. John Dee, and presents an overview of Dee's scientific achievements, intelligence and spy work, imperial strategizing, and his work developing methods to communicate with angels using the Enochian keys. The book pieces together Dee's fragmented spirit diaries and examines Enochian in precise detail and the angels' plan to establish a new world order. It explores Dee's influence on Sir Francis Bacon, modern science, Rosicrucianism, and 20th century occultists like Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, and Anton LaVey. Dr. John Dee was Queen Elizabeth I's court advisor and astrologer, and the foremost scientific genius of the 16th century. Laying the foundation for modern science, he actively promoted mathematics and astronomy, as well as made advances in navigation and optics that helped elevate England to the foremost imperial power in the world. Centuries ahead of his time, his theoretical work included the concept of light speed and prototypes for telescopes and solar panels. Dee, the original 007, his crown-given moniker, even invented the idea of a British Empire, envisioning fledgling America as the new Atlantis, himself as Merlin, and Elizabeth as Arthur. Dee was suppressed from mainstream history because he spent the second half of his career developing a method for contacting angels. Check it out if you like getting weird, like me.
New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Rome, Paris, Tokyo, London, Australia, a town in Australia, Miami, Texas, the North Pole, Alta, California. That's right, you fucking pigs. The Secret Society of Fly Tires is going on tour. Your lovable wet host Marnt is packing up all of his worldly possessions, putting them into his Toyota Prius, and bringing your favorite podcast to a theater, vacant lot, garage, or damp basement near you. Yeah, Marnt has to pack up all of his things and leave because his wife's new boyfriend said he's not allowed to stay in their garage any longer because of his odor, but his forced eviction was the perfect catalyst to get him to take his show on the road. Get tickets now at ticketpig.com. Oh, and there are VIP packages available too. For a modest $450, you can meet the host of the Secret Society of Fly Tires and watch him tie a fly with thine very eyes. He'll be shirtless, and so will you. Nothing weird will happen unless you pay for the Gold, Platinum, Diamond Plus VIP package, where weird stuff will definitely happen. Good luck. Get your tickets and VIP packages now. They're going to sell out. They're flying off the shelves. Everybody wants to see the Secret Society of Fly Tires live and in the flesh. And trust me, there will be lots of flesh at this show. Tons of flesh and meat, both cooked and uncooked. But don't take my word for it. Just listen to what Marnt has to say about it.
That's right.
Thanks, Marnt. I can't wait to see the Secret Society of Fly Tires live on tour at a venue near me. This is going to be an incredibly wet experience.
Please note that this is not a real advertisement, and the company, brand, entity, or product mentioned in the preceding ad in no way endorses, agrees with, or knows about this podcast.